What's going on, everyone? So the San Antonio Spurs entered free agency, definitely needing a big man. I talked very heavily about that. They needed a big man, at least in a backup role. Guy, ideally, that could even slot alongside a Victor Wembanyama at times. Well, they got their guy. They got Luke Kornet. They signed Luke Kornet to a 4-year, $41 million deal. Right? He's a guy that I think is going to be fantastic for the San Antonio Spurs. I think he's a guy that can really bring some real impact to this roster. I think he's a guy that can really kind of just play the role, fit in nicely. You can even slot him alongside Victor Wembanyama at times. He brings the size, the length, the toughness, the experience, all of those things. Excellent rebounder, including offensive rebounding. He had basically the same amount of offensive rebounds as he did defensive rebounds. Need that, especially Wemby likes to take a bunch of threes, so it'd be nice to have an interior presence that at times you can have both of them on the court and get a guy that is a good offensive rebounder in limited minutes. Also, Luke Kornet is one of the guys that has built a career as a backup, right? Like the most games he has ever started in a season is 18 games. Last year was 16. So he's a guy that has genuinely built a career on the backup, right? Well, you got your backup center. You look at the rest of the roster, and it's like, okay, well, what else does this team need? What else should this team use? Right? Because, I mean, you could look at this roster technically and be like, they don't really need anything, right? Because you got now Luke Kornet. I mean, unless you end up going and training for a star or whatever, right? But assuming that they don't do anything silly and they just kind of stay the course, right? You're talking, you have plenty of guard depth, right? Like you got more guards than you know what to do with. You have now, thanks to Carter Bryant, you have Harrison Barnes, right? You have multiple guys that can play the three. You have multiple guys that can play the four. I mean, both those guys that I mentioned, plus a Jeremy Sohan can play the four, plus you play, Victor Wembanyama at the four. So you can get creative and play different lineups and looks for a team that you have right now. And look, if we're being honest, I don't think anyone expects the Spurs to win a championship this year. So you can kind of have some experiment time. Obviously, I'd really like to see them make at least the play-in, right? But, again, I don't have a problem, especially early on, experimenting with a couple lineups. I don't want them to get too crazy with it, but, hey, what does this look like? What does it look like with Wemby at the four? Like, I don't want you to start like, hey, let's try point guard Wemby, right? Like, nothing like that. But, if it's like, hey, let's see what, four guards with Wemby looks like. Let's see what, Harrison Barnes, Victor Wembanyama, Carter Bryant, Julian Champagnie, and De'Aaron Fox look like, right? Just like 3, 6, 8 guys with Victor Wembanyama and see how that looks, right? Like, I don't mind you doing and experimenting various things. So you can make the argument that, hey, like Spurs don't really need anything crazy. But I do think, and I'd look to add a couple of things. I'd look to either A, bring in some veteran experience, right? Ideally, guys that can do both play and, just be a veteran for you. But I wouldn't hate if they brought in kind of, like the Udonis Haslem, the Jared Dudley type of guy, right? Just like that vet. It's why I really like Harrison Barnes, keeping Harrison Barnes around. I would still keep Chris Paul if he didn't want to go leave to LA or anything like that, right? Like if you keep Chris Paul, but I don't think Chris Paul would play just the mentor role. Like I think he wants to play out on the basketball court. If he's going to stay in the league, I think he wants to be, not necessarily a starter, but he wants to be able to play X amount of minutes. And it's just like, where do you really find the minutes? But if you can find that vet or two that can come in and be like, hey, understand, you're probably going to have some DMPs some nights. You're probably going to have nights where you play 8 minutes, but we're looking for you to kind of be that mentor, be that key piece. Like, hey, maybe you're even paying him a little more for a year or two than you would otherwise, just to kind of give him that incentive to do so. Right. And, like, I'm not saying you never played the guy, but, like if you can work it out to where, they make sure that they understand the role. I am all for that 100%. The other kind of way that I would go about this is guys that you think have the potential to be something, right? Like you got a couple guys like come to mind, like Amani Bates is available. Jabari Walker is available, right? Like, do you maybe bring in those guys to your young core, your young foundation as guys that have upside potential and could maybe be a piece now or in the future, right? Like that's kind of where I'm at. Either go the veteran route to where you look at it, you have enough youth and young core to basically lead the charge. So get those veterans to kind of fill in the blanks, or go get the youth, bring in the youthful players that can come in, slot in, play a role, understand the role, but can give you that upside and potential to maybe be something, right? And Amani Bates, for example, 6'9", 200-pound, versatile type of wing that you can slot in, 2 through 4 on many occasions, right? Shot coming off of just under 37% from three-point range on 3 attempts, right? But he's 21 years old, incredibly young, incredibly talented, right? It's just, he was on a team like Cleveland that, they're the best team in all of basketball. I mean, how much opportunity is he really going to get on a regular basis when, you basically are good, right? You're not looking for a young 21-year-old to come in and play 30 minutes a night, right? Because you're trying to win it. You have an opportunity to play for a championship, right? So you're trying to win an NBA championship. A team like the Spurs, they can't afford that. They can bring in a young player, kind of give them an opportunity. Outside of that, I still think, I wouldn't hate another big man or two, or like a versatile big, like Gershon Yabusele. I still think makes a ton of sense for the Spurs, right? Gives you a guy that slot in at the 4, guy that can slot in at the 5, do different lineups, different looks with him, right? A guy that can come in, kind of solidify the roster. I do. One of the things that I talk about, right, because I made videos about Yabusele, like, you got to keep in mind, 1, can't overpay the guy. 2, was last year just a, opportunity year, right? Context matters. Sixers were heavily injured, so he got opportunities that he's not going to get anywhere else, right? Or particularly with the Spurs, because you got to imagine that, everyone's going to be healthy and they're young and, they're going to be playing their top end guys more, right? And 2, did he just have a good year? Right? We've seen guys have great years. Guys come out of left field and are fantastic, right? And then never able to replicate that. Even guys that have had better years than what Yabusele had, right? So if you can find the right pieces, right? You don't have to rush it. Plenty of time in free agency. You got plenty of time between now and training camp and all that stuff. So, kind of let the dominoes fall where they fall, and then can you find that gem, find that diamond in the rough or two that, that you can take a flyer on, or bring in that key kind of vet, that guy that's like, teams aren't running the door for, and it's like, hey, he'd be a great mentor to, Castle and Dylan Harper. He'd be a great, if it's a big man, he'd be a great mentor to Victor Wembanyama, or if he's a wing, he'd be a great mentor to Carter Bryant and stuff, right? Like, start putting the guys around to help kind of elevate the next guy. I mean, Chris Paul's impact on that team last year, beyond just the basketball production, because he did have a good season basketball-wise, but beyond the basketball production, was measurable for that team, right? Like, he was very impactful. So, again, you look at this young Spurs team, and it's like, what do they need? And it's like, well, really, I mean, again, you can make the argument they don't really need anything, right? Like, they kind of just go into the season, kind of fill in the roster spots at this point, and then, see what you can do with your young guys, right? But, again, I kind of look at those 2 routes. I think wouldn't hurt to have another big man, get a third big man, get, like I said, a versatile Yabusele, right, type player where he can slot in at the 4, slot in at the 5, kind of give you that versatility. That's what I would look at. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass question you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Also, not, as we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.